when it comes to jobs, there's some compromises we can make and some that can never be made. Most of my working background has been in warehousing, forklifts, and all sorts of things like that. I've got a vast experience with it, from big distribution centers to small family run businesses, anything and everything in between. I've got a lot of experience. And within those environments, there's been not so many good leadership. So, from my own experience, I can compromise on salary, I can compromise on the working hours, I can compromise on the location. The one thing I can never compromise is working in a toxic environment. If it's a bad working culture, badly run business, poor leadership, I can't put up with it. I can't stay. And that's just literally where I draw the line. So, like for instance, I left the job 2023 in September 2023. It was my highest salary I had. Um, People were not happy, and yet none of them could bring themselves to leave because the salary was the highest any of us had had. And I just said to him, I made the point that if it's going to tie you now, it'll tie you forever. So if you're miserable today, you're gonna forever be miserable just because someone's dangled some money in your face. Um, it ain't ideal to have to leave something, is it? Of course it ain't, especially when you can you have a level of luxury away from work, but when work is that heavy and you're that miserable, it's not a good place to be. I was literally, I can afford things. I was comfortable financially, but every time it was turn up for work, to get out the car, and I just like my head was down, and I was like, "Oh God, another day of this shit," And it's like that's not a good place to be, and that affects you. That affects so much of your life that I don't think many people really comprehend. They'll literally sacrifice everything for money, and I'm not like that at all. So I was the one that inevitably walked away. I've had, that job was really up and down. There was a lot of lies told before we took the job. For instance, there was it's a warehouse role. It was new. It was new build, so they're only hiring 5 people. I think there was a lot of interviews, and there was 5 people hired. I was one of them. And then slowly but surely, some supervisors come from a different place, a different company anyway. But they just started causing a bit more hassle than needed. They weren't needed. They were causing more trouble. Some more staff that weren't very inept. But the lies that were told were just, it was getting out of control, because we was told, for instance, you'll be on call for emergency call outs. So you'll be on standby. So literally when your shift finishes, all the way up to the next shift. So like, let's say you finish work at 4 p.m. Any time between 4 p.m. and the shift start in the next day, so 8 p.m., you could get a phone call. And if you get a phone call, you need to come in immediately because it's an emergency, because it's work for a utility company and a warehousing, no logistics. So, like, for instance, if there's a burst water main, they're going to need you to come in and source the part and then get it loaded. Literally just you and an admin member of staff. So you're the one doing the work, the admin's supporting you with making sure it's the right product and things like this and getting into the facility. It's just, yeah, so okay. So at the interview, you're told maybe but you'll be on standby. But it's only maybe 3 call outs a year. So you're like, oh, I can put up with that. That's not too intrusive. That's fine. Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, you've done all your training and everything, and now it's like now everybody's on call. So it's like your week's this week, someone else's next week, and so on. And effectively, it ended up being every 5, because obviously it's 5 of us. Every 5 weeks, it's your turn, which is nearly enough every month. You've got a week. And it wasn't 3 times a year. You could have 3 times in a week, sometimes 3 times in a day. So literally, you've finished work, you've done a whole shift just like everybody else in the world. You're doing full-time hours. We was even doing overtime as well sometimes. And we'd come in the weekend, we'd do a few hours after work. And then you'd still, midnight comes, or 2 a.m. All of a sudden, your phone rings. You might be in the bath. It might be in the evening. You're trying to cook dinner. All these little things that people don't aware of. I'm also someone that likes to have my phone on silent. I don't like being disturbed. I hate ping noises. I hate all this crap. And then they don't give you a work phone. So you had to have your phone available all the time. And they literally could call you any minute, and you have to just run out the door like you're Ghostbusters. And it was like, this is unreal. No one said this. That was a complete fabrication. There was other things as well, like for instance, the The pallets weren't safe. They were all like water degraded. We was having to lift heavier stock than you should, literally 30 kilos plus on our own. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. You should have support for this. This is too much. The workload's intense. And yet they expected a lot of done as well. There's so many things, the yard was dangerous. You have to go and fetch some things out in the yard, but you've got lorries coming, trucks coming. They're all coming in. There's no sort of route there, so you could literally just get run over. There was so many nuances, and it was more the constant lies and things getting eroded. For instance, we was told we'd have a certain amount of breaks in a day. You'd get this. All of a sudden, they're taking away a break, and they're making you stay an extra half an hour and things like this. It's like everything's getting eroded. It was poorly managed, poorly organised. So anyway, there's a lot of things, and it was like one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, and it was like this is not a good place to work for me at all. I can't deal with this anymore. I have no respect for you because you just lie all the time, and they don't seem to respect everybody else. So, for instance, you could do overtime. You could say, "I'll go do 2 hours today. I don't mind staying on another hour later, and I can come in on a Sunday." You could do all that, but as soon as you miss one overtime, like let's say you went home an hour before. Let's say they want you to stay till 8, but you can only stay till 7. They'll be disappointed that you didn't do the whole thing. Let's say you did a Sunday, but let's say there was overtime Saturday and Sunday, but you only did the Sunday. They're disappointed you didn't do the Saturday, so you're not as committed. It's like, this is out, it's like, what are you talking about? So I say, so many nuances. I've also worked at a different place where I like to be proactive and I like to support people. I don't like to see people struggle. So if I saw someone's working on their own and they're doing a lot of work, it's a lot of physical stuff, and I've not got anything to do at the moment, I'll jump in and help them because that's what I like to do. It keeps me busy, but I like supporting people. I like to see people, I like to see people do well. And yet I got reprimanded for helping people because in my man, because some people got I call it like peacock. Some people like to fluster them and make themselves important. So they like to assert themselves rather than manage in a positive way that encourages people working together and supporting each other, which helps the business thrive. No, they wanted me just to stand on a location, even if there's nothing to do. You stay in your location, you just stay there. And it's like, this is just, what is this? This is just bad management. And when you see all these poor leadership, it doesn't want to make you step into leadership roles, does it? Because it's like, I wouldn't want to be in that. I wouldn't want to, let's say the people above them encourage that. I couldn't work for someone that's encouraging that. That's a toxic environment, isn't it? I can't be in a toxic environment. So these sort of places, they just drive me nuts. So I can compromise money and I can compromise the hours sometimes, depending on the shifts and things. I can compromise to a degree. Salary, location. Of course, we all have an expectation, but there's a little bit of compromise. But if it's a toxic environment, I can't do it. So when I go to an interview, for instance, I'm looking at the working culture. I'm looking at the facility. I'm looking at everything and thinking, is this somewhere I'd want to work? Because I don't care how much money they're dangling in front of me. It's just as much a chance for you to be impressed by them as it is the other way around. And I'm a very honest person. I don't lie. So that's one of the things that I would be talking about in an interview, for instance. Is like, what's the working culture like? If someone gets uncomfortable with that, it's like, well, that's probably not the place I want. I don't really want to be, you know what I mean? So some people be scared to ask a question or try to, maybe they don't want to point towards that. But the thing is, if you don't, and they so if they get uncomfortable, they've shown you potentially that that's what that company's like, and who would want to work there then? So yeah. So that's what I'm like. So if someone thinks, oh, you leave jobs, it's like, yeah, I leave jobs because they're toxic. It'd be nice if a job wasn't toxic, wouldn't it? It'd be nice if a job supported you and you can support, you get appreciated for the work you do, but you're encouraged to work together and everything's fair. That should just be a given. The job I was doing, there was work that was like heavy. It was really heavy, and a lot of it was in the yard. So they'd have 3 or 4 people working in the yard, lifting this stuff together. They'd work and collaborate together. Someone's pearl of wisdom was, let's bring this stock inside. We already had a lot to do inside. I was operating a forklift, but I had to keep jumping off the reach forklift to get the product, and then I put it in this box, a pallet. And then when it's finished, we had to wrap it up, and then it get put for dispatch, goods out, ready to be loaded for later. So we'd all have our own little bit to do. And I was busy enough with what I was doing. It was keeping me busy. I was flying around, and all of a sudden, let's bring the heavy stuff in as well. And now you can do that as well. So obviously, I'm stopping more often now on the truck. I'm having to lift heavier items, but I'm doing it on my own. And it's like, this is ridiculous. Why is this not out there? Why are you, this is slowing the process down, and it's dangerous. You shouldn't be lifting this stuff. And it was just getting so intense. And it was like, what? This doesn't even make sense. So some people are getting a really easy job all of a sudden, but they'll act like it's hard. And others of us end up with this really high workload. So I did end up butting heads with a few colleagues, to be totally honest. Because one was just walking around all the time with a flask in their hand, doing nothing and acting like they're busy all the time. And he's just working the yard. And the yard, as had been figured out, the yard was now a lot lighter and a lot easier to manage, while the rest of us were non-stop. But they're trying to act like they do all the work. So I just pointed out that you're pissing about here. You're acting like you're doing everything, and you're doing hardly anything. And they're really defensive with it. They go, "How am I doing nothing?" I said, "You're just wandering around though. You're just talking all the time, and you think you're not, and you keep accusing other people of talking." He's like, "Well, when am I talking?" I said, "Well, when the trucks come in, when the lorries come in." I said, "You're just talking to the drivers all the time. I've seen you. You just stand there for like 20 minutes chatting." It's unreal. And I was only doing that because they were accusing others of talking. Our load was so heavy that you had to take breaks, otherwise you just freaking snap. Um, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like it when things are unbalanced. They're not fair. Everybody should be treated the same, equally. And I think when it's not a nice place to be, is it? So yeah, for me personally, if somewhere's toxic, I'll walk away. And I don't care about the consequences, and I don't care what people think. It's irrelevant. People can think, oh, you keep leaving this or you leave that. It's like, yeah, because I'm in the search of somewhere great, and I won't lower my standards. So I don't care, because people on the outside, they can perceive whatever they want, but they're not the ones that work in the environment. They're not the ones that have to deal with the politics of it all, you know. Um, and yeah, the whole point is to find somewhere that sustains a good quality of life, work-life balance. So you literally go to work happy. That's what I want. You want to be able to go to work and enjoy yourself, don't you? Say, look, I like this. We've got a good team, or I'm appreciated for what I do, and everything's fair. That's what you're looking for. So yeah, you can compromise on some things, but that's just I can't work for toxic leaders.